Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, Night Out Falcoholic Kevin, joined by a wonderful guest. He's Allen Strk at Allen Strk. It's been a minute, Allen, since the end of the season. Welcome back. Hope you're doing well. I know you said somehow caught a cold in the middle at the beginning of July. Definitely bad luck of the draw there. But aside from the cold, how you doing?
Oh, man, it's the summer, so it's fantastic. But nevertheless, as you can hear, I'm congested. I got my mute button ready if I'm sneezing. But we were prepared for this show because we're going to talk about the Falcons secondary. I remember being somewhat down on the unit, and then in preparation, I was like, okay, I can understand their approach to it because I think many people, whether it's to the staff or even the fan base, kind of wondering how come they didn't really sign a credible veteran. But then you look across the unit, it's like I could see why they're going with this personnel group, just because there's players that have plenty to prove, and I think there's some veterans that might be better than we expect.
Yeah, no, this is a very interesting group. I heard a really interesting Antonio Hamilton stat from the Athletic Football Show the other day that we can get into as well for the Antonio Hamilton believers out there. So we'll get into the corners, we'll get into the safeties, all that good secondary stuff on today's episode, guys. So welcome in. Before we dive all the way in, of course, want to bring you word from our sponsor, BetOnline, folks. BetOnline's your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. I know the NHL is over, the NBA is over, even the NBA draft is in the rearview mirror, but we've got baseball, we've got golf, we've got soccer, including all the top fights, UFC, MMA, boxing, all that stuff. And over at BetOnline, they've got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And when the game's over, BetOnline has a new online casino you can check out to get in on that game of blackjack or poker that you've been hankering for, or unwind with one of their over 150 online slots games. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website, BetOnline, today to get in on the action. Just remember, when you sign up, to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on it's now a 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. So a little bit of a new promotion going on there with BetOnline. But no matter what, guys, BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Allen. So you want to start with the corners? I think it's probably the more interesting overall because with safety, it's like, well, we got Jessie Bates, and safety's interesting too. But probably the corners, and we probably don't have to spend too much time on A.J Terrell because he's really good, but he is potentially coming up for a big extension and has had some ups and downs. I mean, all corners do. I think this is something that a lot of fans don't really get, is that all corners get burned. Go watch Sauce Gardner and you'll see him get burned sometimes. It's everybody gets burned. And A.J Terrell, of course, had a good season last year, not necessarily on par with his best, but still very, very good. And I think that's just kind of who he is. It's just a very good corner. But what do you think about A.J Terrell and his long-term future here in Atlanta?
I think he has an unfortunate tendency of just allowing touchdowns. Some corners allow just big plays or consecutive catches. He gets caught up at touchdowns. I think that's what happened in 2022. Remember, early in the season, I think it was 3 games in a row, he allowed a touchdown because I remember Michael Thomas got the better of him, and I think Cooper Kupp, and then I forget who else, maybe DK Metcalf. But he just has that frustrating tendency, in the big man-to-man moments against certain receivers like a Mike Evans or DJ Moore. He kind of falls apart. I think corner is an unfortunate position where people remember your transgressions or big plays a lot rather than your great moments. So I think that's kind of been not his downfall, just something that I think people are just kind of stuck in his mind. And he can get a little grabby at times, but I still think he's a top 10 caliber corner. I think you still can trust him. And it's going to be an interesting fit with Raheem Morris, because Raheem Morris, when he was the interim coach in 2020, he put Terrell on an island right away. He's like, you're going to go cover Michael Thomas. You're going to go cover Mike Evans, Keenan Allen. And other than Keenan Allen, I think he did a really good job his rookie year. And that was a tough rookie year because I think he missed earliest part of the year. And then I think he had a COVID issue because remember, that was a COVID year.
Yeah.
So I just remember Raheem Morris put all the trust in him. So I'm curious, even though Jimmy Lake, I think they like to play a lot of zone, I'm wondering if they're going to at least have Terrell shadow top receivers, because they did do that in 2020. I wonder if Morris has that, full trust in him. So I think that's the one curiosity with A.J Terrell this year, because I think we kind of know who he is at this point. It's just how he's going to be utilized against the premier receivers is going to be key, because as you know, the Falcons schedule a lot of primetime games and a lot of big matchups.
Yeah, no, they're gonna. I think they're gonna. They haven't extended him yet. They still could. We'll see if they do. But if they don't, I think this is like a test year. It's like they probably are going to put him out there and match him up against the top receivers and be like, all right, go earn your 25 million plus per year. Go show what you can do against these guys because we need you. We need you to do this. And a lot of guys respond really well to the challenge. I think Terrell's certainly one that could. And I think he's a very good corner. He's just not quite in that like absolutely elite group of like the top maybe 3 guys, but I think he's in that second tier, and he's a huge cornerstone for this defense. Like I have a hard time thinking that they're going to let him go. It's maybe a little bit more of a risk to not extend him here. You might end up having to pay him more next year, but it also isn't terribly surprising. But again, an extension could get done during the season. It could get done now. It could get done basically any time. So I'm curious what happens with that, but I think it's nice to at least know that we've got the one CB1, main corner spot locked down. But then the questions start after that, right? The questions all come immediately after we get past A.J Terrell. And with the second corner, the other outside corner opposite Terrell, it seems like it's kind of an open competition right now between Clark Phillips III and Mike Hughes, with D. Alford basically manning the slot, being the heavy favorite to win the slot, basically being unchallenged. And Antonio Hamilton is actually working as the number 2 slot corner, which is kind of interesting. But the number 2 outside corner spot, I think, is the one that most people are focused on. And I guess it's maybe a little bit surprising that like you see Clark Phillips III and Mike Hughes and you're like, oh, is this it? Like, is this not, we're not going to bring in anybody else. But we know the team like loves Mike Hughes, especially Jerry Gray, huge Mike Hughes fan. He's coached him basically his entire career. And then Clark Phillips, we saw the flashes last year. So, what do you think about that competition, and who do you got?
Real quick, Kevin.
Yeah.
Where did Mike Hughes? Where did he go to college?
UCF legend. I forgot. Yeah, you're right. I missed that.
Yeah,
That was the first time. That was the first time I didn't say UCF legend. I think that I've ever mentioned Mike Hughes. But
yeah, where their corners were last year, even the worst corners in the league last year, like Hill, Westwood, Kendrick, Kobe Durant was a decent slot corner, yet they still managed to stay afloat. I think Clark Phillips has, from a coverage standpoint, all intangibles, but how is he going to handle the physical side? Like, I think that season finale against the Saints, you saw how he struggles against bigger receivers. Granted, that game was just a complete debacle, but it's just him from a physical standpoint. How can he hold up? Because he has those traits as a corner, the fluid hips, the footwork, the technique. Like, he's definitely a natural corner. It's just, can he overcome the physical limitations? And I don't know, Mike Hughes, he's just hanging there. I know, look, I remember Arthur Smith was talking about how last year he's good against run support, which is important. Let's not discount the corner being good against run. I think D. Alford's excellent against the run as well.
I thought D. Alford was better, yeah.
Yeah, like D. Alford, I remember what was it, the Jaguars game, and I know everyone forgets about that game, but he had like 3 hits on a couple of drives. I was just like, whoa, like D. Alford was really flashing. So I think that's a concern. It's just like, if Clark Phillips doesn't pan out, do you have a valid option? Like, do you have someone that could really come in and play 50, 60 snaps? So I think that was a concern, but I think just kind of like trial by error. If you really believe in Clark Phillips, then just got to bank on it. So, you hope he wins the battle. It's just, I'm curious, how is he going to overcome these physical limitations? Because we've seen smaller corners back. We watched Brent Grimes over years try to do it. So you kind of just got to take it for what it is.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, especially if they're going to be moving Terrell around, you can probably put Terrell on the bigger receiver and leave Clark Phillips to the smaller guys, because very few teams are trotting out the Twin Towers type, trying to get huge. Like, it's a small ball these days in the NFL. Like, everybody's doing smaller receivers. It seems like that's the way the NFL is going. So in that way, it's like Clark Phillips should be better suited for that, and the switch to more zone will help too. The Falcons were arguably the most man-heavy team in the NFL last year. That was not something that Clark Phillips did much of in college to begin with. So it's impressive that he sort of adjusted to that quickly and was able to play outside against a lot of different receiver types. And when he's played zone, I think he just knows how to play zone. Like, he's just a really good zone corner. I think this is a better schematic fit for him now, and I think we've seen in zone that he can handle big receivers. I mean, watch his game against Drake London. He was probably the corner that played Drake London the best in all of college football, just by sort of reacting and keeping his eyes on the quarterback and breaking up passes before London had a chance to get his hands on him. And couldn't necessarily get boxed out with the size as easily when he's not playing absolute, right up on him. So I do like Clark Phillips. Mike Hughes, the one thing that I'll say is like his best season came when he played outside for Kansas City. He was actually graded like in the 70s according to PFF when he played outside corner in Kansas City back, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. So Mike Hughes has the best tape playing outside. So maybe I'm glad someone is like, actually, maybe we should actually just play him outside. But the Falcons it's funny that they have these like undersized outside corners, like 2 of them with Mike Hughes and Clark Phillips, that people were like, well, we should make them slot corners because they're small. And then it's like, actually, maybe we should just play them outside because that's where they're best. So it's funny that it happened twice with the same team here. And I do want to give D. Alford his love too, as who's going to be the starting slot corner. Doesn't seem like there's a ton of competition at this point. And I love D. Alford. I was upset that he got taken off the field last year for a couple of punt returns a game, which didn't seem like a good enough reason to change your secondary around. But I think D. Alford's really good. I think he's an absolute steal that they were able to get him out of the CFL. I think this year he could emerge as like one of the better slot corners in the NFL. I'm really excited to see him play more.
Yeah, you just want to see a coaching staff trust him because he's shown flashes, but for whatever reason, 2022, 2023, by November, it seemed like he fell out of favor. We didn't really know why because he would consistently flash, especially those first 2 months last season. Like, when we talk about the Falcons defense, how organized they were and how they weren't allowing big plays, but just the open field tackling. And that's what always really stood out with D. Alford. You have his flashes, breaking up passes, but you just know in the open field he's going to make a play. And also breaking down screens. Like, he just plays with great anticipation. So, those corners are just natural football players. I know it's kind of a basic term, but he just seems like one of those guys that knows the game, and you have to take those players. He's not just some corner, an athlete trying to be a corner. He is a legitimate corner. So I just hope, he actually, if he continues playing at a high level, keep playing him, because if for whatever reason, 2022, 2023, it seemed like that part of the season he fell out of favor and nobody knew why.
Yeah, it was bizarre because it can't have been based on his play because he was playing really well when he got picks. Yeah. It sounds like it was because they thought it was too much to ask him to return punts and play corner, which that's not a good reason to bench your slot corner. It's just that's not a good enough reason. I think that was a big mistake. So I'm glad he's back where he belongs, starting in the slot. And then Antonio Hamilton, I think that's kind of an underrated signing. Right now, he seems to sort of be like that sort of corner 4, just top reserve type guy. And he's playing in the slot in practice right now, but we know he can play outside. I think they're just trying to sort of train him up to be able to be that versatile player that can kind of be their top depth guy. I think he's pretty underrated. If you look at his PFF grade last year, where he basically started the entire season and was like the best cornerback on the Cardinals, which that might not be saying a lot. It is the Cardinals, but he graded out as an above average corner basically for the Cardinals on a defense that was not talented. It was not good. And it's really hard to look good at corner when the rest of the defense isn't good. But I know some on the Athletic Football Show, there was a great stat that someone referenced where if you look at Antonio Hamilton in very I think that they sort of broke it down specifically, if you filter his stats and include PFF's doing a new coverage grading system starting this year, and they've sort of backfilled it to 2023's data as well, and that'll be announced at some point. But it was Seth Galina from PFF who was talking about it because he has access to the early data, and basically saying the current PFF coverage grades are based on being targeted, and they don't give you a grade if you're not targeted. But he's a lot of people have complained about this, myself included, because half of coverage is covering guys so they don't get targeted. That's half of coverage. So if you add all the data in of Antonio Hamilton when he was not being when he was not targeted, his coverage grade improves to be a top 30 corner. And if you take out slot corners and just talk about outside corners, he's a top 15 corner. So stats say that he was a good corner last year. And I wouldn't be surprised if I thought he might be more involved in the cornerback 2 battle. It seems like Falcons really want to give Clark Phillips that job if they can, which makes sense. But I think we're going to see Antonio Hamilton play this year as the top depth option, and I think it could be good. Maybe he'll be the dime corner too if they need one. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any takes on Hamilton. I just thought he was kind of the most intriguing of all the sort of other guys they brought in.
Yeah, he's picked up steam the last few months. Just seeing these statistics, seeing his name or hearing his name mentioned on podcasts that very credible that we listened to. That Jonathan Gannon defense, they were like experimenting all last season. They're just throwing so many things around. So, and that division is really good. You consider what San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Seattle has on the outside, or even in the slot as well. So, like he's built himself up well. I definitely want to watch him more. But look, I think Raheem Morris definitely is going to have this defense on the field in preseason. It's not going to be a situation where they're only going to get one series in 3 games. Not trying to throw any shots here, but you know what I mean. They're gonna get on the field and they're really going to compete. So if Hamilton proves himself, like it's July right now, so just do the reps. I think he could establish himself wherever it may be. But it is very intriguing with him because you always want kind of that experienced corner. Even though I think Terrell at this point is pretty experienced.
Yeah,
it's just having someone of a mainstay, someone who's versatile as well. I think could be a big addition. So I look forward to seeing more of him because, like you, he's definitely, like you mentioned, he's definitely picked up buzz in the past few months. Because when that signing happened, it was just like, all right, corner from Arizona. That defense, they were just throwing things around last year. They had some moments they competed, but no one really took anything from the Arizona defense. But for a reason now, it could be a steal. And I think that's kind of the beauty of a corner. The corner position is just you find these gems. Look at like a Robert McClain or a Brian Poole. Just mention all names. So it can make a huge difference because, as you know, trying to cover the inside, slot receivers, it can make or break your team. We saw the Falcons in the early 2010s really struggle. It wasn't until 2012, Robert McClain, where it's like, okay, they finally have a slot corner. I could get torn to pieces.
Yeah, we're gonna get a Robert McClain, trivia. That would be a real deep cut.
Yeah, that's 2012, Ed. Because wow, when Grimes went down with that injury, I was heartbroken because Grimes goes down as like one of my all-time favorite Falcons. And Dante Robinson, we were very concerned about, but credit to Robert McClain stepping up.
Yeah, big time stuff there. But yeah, the Falcons brought in a ton of just depth guys.
Kevin King.
Yeah, Kevin King is obviously the name that most people know. Anthony Johnson apparently is moving up the depth chart according to Daniel Flick, who Anthony Johnson's working like with the second and third team at this point after joining the team recently. I know they brought in like Harrison Hand, who was like a draft crush of mine like several years ago. Natrone Brooks is back from last year. Ed, are you interested in any of these guys? You think any of these guys have a legit chance? I mean, I think probably the top like 5 corners are more or less settled. I mean, maybe the top 4 at the very least, probably top 5, but there could be one spot for one of these guys. So
I'm curious. Like Kevin King, was he out of the league last year?
He's been out of the league for 2 years. I think he had an injury 2 years ago, and then last year he did not play. So yeah, he's been out for a while.
I don't know if it's a Raheem preference thing because Raheem does like bigger corners, what has that length. Because Kevin King, I think when he entered the league, people were talking about his length and his size. Because like Akil Weatherspoon, I think should not be starting in the NFL, and he was a star of the Rams last year. For a reason, Raheem Morris liked him. Now, granted, the Rams had serious cap constraints, so maybe that played a role. But I do think Raheem has a type, so maybe that's why Kevin King is there. But if you watch Kevin King play over the course of his career, you do not want that man on the field. Like, I'll never forget the NFC title game, with Scotty Miller. It's unfortunate Scotty Miller, they can't go at it together because that brings back fond memories, especially if you're a Tampa Bay fan.
Yeah, no, it's he's interesting because of the draft pedigree, but unless he's made major strides like in terms of his technique and stuff like that, I have a hard time seeing him make it. The team liked Natrone Brooks enough to keep him around, and he's made it to this new coaching staff, UDFA from last season. So we'll see. He's definitely undersized, but someone the team seems to like. And then, Anthony Johnson maybe is the more interesting one. He's kind of like Kevin King, but he's played a little bit more recently and, younger. So maybe one of those guys shakes out. We get a decent depth piece in there, but I wouldn't rule out them still adding another corner, like another veteran. Yeah. We'll see. But this is definitely one of the positions where they could, if they feel like they need to. But the other position that they could would be safety, where it's Jessie Bates, and then it's a lot of questions. And this definitely could be a place where they choose to add a veteran if they don't feel like they're getting what they need out of the second safety in camp. But we don't have to worry about Jessie Bates. Jessie Bates is just phenomenal. I mean, year one, I think we all like expected Jessie Bates to be this like huge piece that would change the defense, but it's like, I mean, he was like almost like more in some ways. Like it was like, I feel like Jessie Bates was and Calais Campbell, honestly, those two veterans, like they were kind of like the linchpins for this defense becoming like a fringe top, like a top 15 defense, like from from like the depths of the NFL to like top 15. I feel like Jessie Bates was one of the key pieces that helped that transition, and just yeah, it's incredible what having a top end safety can do for your defense.
You could argue, obviously, the running game did their thing, but the games against Carolina, New Orleans that they won, he's pretty much changed the game with his interceptions. So I think we knew Jessie Bates was going to be the organizer. He was going to be someone that brings solidity to the back, but the playmaking ability, there were moments it was just, wow, he's literally won them that game. He's making that quarterback think twice about throwing his direction. So it's just, he's everything that you would want from a playmaking safety. It's just making the quarterback hesitate or punish them for thinking he had a passing window. So, and Jessie Bates, and I love doing those podcasts at the end of games that, obviously the Falcons won, and we would just talk about Jessie Bates for 10 minutes because it really was a Jessie Bates show at times.
Yeah. And it was great. And he's one of the big reasons that you feel more confident in like the rest of the secondary, just because Jessie Bates is there. And he is that eraser, the guy that sort of covers up mistakes, makes mistakes go away, and he can end long drives just by getting that turnover. Like you could be having a terrible drive and giving up play after play, but then he gets his hands on that football and it's, doesn't matter. It's all wiped away. So,
and time will tell. And look, I love Lou Anarumo, but that Bengals defense severely missed Jessie Bates last year. Maybe they improve this year. We'll see. But I just think you look at the Bengals secondary and how much they allowed big plays. I think they're like 31st in yards per play allowed. And then you see what the Falcons did, and just Bates erasing plays time and time again. And he was really good at run support. He did have, because I think the one flaw in his game, he can be a little shaky with his tackling, but I thought more times than not, he actually he made this open field tackle. So, yeah, just absolute one of the best free agent signings in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's been fantastic having him here, and he's going to be a core piece, obviously, for this defense. Probably going to, if this is like the Rams defense, probably going to be more of that like prototypical free safety playing more deep stuff, while the Falcons have more of a box safety. Under Nielsen, they basically just rotated or played split safeties or whatever. So he was playing around the line of scrimmage, a decent chunk of the time. I don't know how much he's going to be doing that in this defense, but the second safety, that's the question mark, because we've long hoped for another UCF legend, Richie Grant, to sort of just take the reins of that second safety spot, and he's manned that position, but it's never been like good enough. It's been fine at times. It's been good at times, and it's
turnover here and there.
Yeah, and it's been bad at times, and it's just you need more from your second safety. Richie Grant, I think, is someone that's going to play in the NFL like for a while. Like I don't think he's going to be out of the NFL if he doesn't earn a new contract in Atlanta. But given his second round pedigree, it's like you were expecting an impact safety, and that hasn't really materialized yet. And now he has to fend off a challenger in DeMarco Helms, who a seventh round safety who has kind of become a stabilizing force when he's been in the game, doesn't have the athletic upside that Grant does, doesn't necessarily have the high end like pass coverage playmaking, but just an incredibly reliable tackler, very smart, doesn't make mistakes, doesn't have the range on the back end, but if they're playing a guy as a more prototypical box safety, DeMarco Helms seems kind of tailor-made for that. So I think this is the big battle to watch at safety. And do you have a favorite at this stage?
Just based on the tape, it's like Helms just gives you more dependability, especially even from a tackling standpoint. Like Grant came in as this big tone setter, someone that can play to run, but I just think sometimes whether it's an anticipation issue or he takes the wrong angle, it just seems like Richie Grant, he wants to put himself in the right position, and then things fall apart. Well, Helms just, first of all, he hasn't shy away from contact too, which I love. Like, I think the Colts game, he really had a great performance where I think that's where they shut down Jonathan Taylor. And he had like a couple, not TFLs, but like just a couple of nice stops. I know both of them lack range, but I just think Helms, he just plays smarter. While Grant, it just seems like the lack of awareness time and time again, just it's like mind numbing, because it's like you're in your fourth year, or third year, excuse me, last year, and I just don't see improvement. And you look at the games against Arizona, you look at games against Tennessee, but it was a big reason why they lost those games. And maybe Morris, Jimmy Lake, they'll have him more in the box, like you mentioned, because I think there's times where he had to play, 25 yards away from the line of scrimmage and you get caught out. But it just, as a safety, you want to want to have depth, you want to have versatility, and if you can't hold your own, it's just like how can you be trusted to play 45, 50 snaps? So this is gonna be a big competition. I'm looking forward to see how Helms progresses because I just think Richie Granson, like you mentioned, he's gonna play, but it's just where is his peak? Is he someone that could still manage to play a role in this league, 40, 45 snaps a game, or he's just essentially a backup at this point? I think we're gonna find that out this year.
Right. It's kind of like, are you a starter or are you a third safety? And like, you can certainly have a long NFL career as a third safety, but we'd all like him to be a starter. They invested a lot. He's a UCF legend, so I hope that he can get it done. The coaching staff does seem to want to at least give him an opportunity to do that, but it seems like Helms is in the lead right now, which doesn't surprise me. Um, for all the reasons you mentioned, Helms is just more. I mean, and it's kind of incredible that like he was a rookie that's like just more sound, fundamentally than Richie Grant still.
And you
But
saw that in preseason. I
yeah,
think he started right away.
yeah, no, and that's another seventh round safety, like to reference another UCF legend in Kamal Ishmael, but
Hey,
Kamal Ishmael was more like a linebacker with his size. Helms
yeah,
is definitely a
he
safety,
got
but
big. Yeah.
yeah, he got thick, man. Kamal Ishmael was just a tank. But another big hit in the seventh round. But yeah, I mean, right now Helms absolutely looks like a big value add there in the seventh. You love to get those guys in here, those late round picks that can be instant contributors. Very rare, but nice to see Helms take that job. And I think at the very least, we know Helms is going to be at worst a third safety probably for this team for the length of his rookie contract.
I got a quick question for you. Was he on your radar when they got picked? Obviously, look, it's hard to assess the seventh round safety, but like, was he one of those late round finds that you had your eye on going to last year's draft?
Don't remember if I ever actually mocked him to Atlanta. I was certainly like familiar with him. I sort of viewed him as more of like a box safety, so I thought the Falcons wouldn't be interested because I was like, oh, with Ryan Nielsen, they want two like interchangeable safeties, so they're gonna go. I think I thought they were gonna go like earlier for an earlier safety that was like more versatile, more like can do deep or box stuff. Um, but I mean, I knew who he was, but yeah, I wasn't really expecting them to add a guy that I thought was more of a box safety. But you watch him play, and it's like, oh, well, he's not just a box safety. That's probably his best fit, but he does have some versatility. But I think ultimately, like in this defense, where he does just mostly get to play the box, he's probably. I mean, I think he could look good. Like I think we saw last year that kind of the athletic limitations are probably a little bit overblown as they often are for safeties. Like people complaining about Kyle Hamilton's 40 time. I still remember that, but
Yeah. He's got
so
ball skills too. I know it was only
yeah,
preseason, but I remember him flashing some ball skills.
yeah,
Like you mentioned, you don't want him covering 30 yards downfield, but if he's someone that can go up against tight ends and just be a presence, because as you know, the teams they're gonna try to get those quick 6, 8 yard quick dump balls. And you just want a safety that's reactive and at least try to make a play on the ball. It's like Richie Grant sometimes a step behind. So it's
yeah,
just a lot of it just comes down to anticipation awareness. And I just think Helms has that more than Grant. But uh, Grant, I think knows he's at a pivotal stage of his career, so
yeah.
let's not write him off. And I know more three safety looks are being used in NFL, although I'm not sure how much Jimmy Lake will use three safety looks. But I think regardless of who loses the battle, they're still going to be a contributor on this defense.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think this is definitely a spot where another veteran could come in just because behind those three guys, it's just sort of a complete free for all. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, the team, they have Micah Abernathy from last year, who was on the team for most of the year as like the a depth safety. He didn't really see the field much outside of like a couple of injury replacement snaps. But the team also brought back Lucas Dennis, who was like the XFL safety from last year, who did make the practice squad and stuck around basically all season, and then signed Dane Cruikshank, the longtime veteran, I think during OTAs. And then I think they have Trey Tarpley the third, who's another former UDFA. So they have some guys. I mean, I think like Dane Cruikshank and Micah Abernathy, they're fine like fourth safeties, but I think this is a
The
spot
special
where
teams
like
guys.
yeah, they're special teams core pieces. I think Lucas Dennis maybe has a little bit more upside because of his, he's still young, played really well in the XFL, so maybe he's someone they want to see. But I think this is definitely a spot where like if Helms or Grant or one of these depth guys doesn't like really shine, they could be like, let's just spend our available money, like let's make a little bit of money and get another like good safety in here to like raise the ceiling of this defense a little bit. But yeah, do you have any takes on some sort of those back into the roster guys?
None really in particular. I know Dave Cruikshank is more of a special teams guy, so and given the changes with the kickoff return rule, maybe he establishes his place because those special teams will be more valuable than ever, and you need those gunners. So maybe he could establish himself there. He does look a bit like Thomas Deku, I want to mention, which I want to believe is a good thing, but others may disagree there. I also want to mention when it comes to the safety position, just I'm curious about how this coaching staff utilized them when it comes against tight ends, because I think as the season went on last year, like you saw Richie Grant have to cover a Trey McBride, a TJ Hawkinson. It didn't necessarily go all that well. I wonder if we're going to see more of the safeties cover one-on-one, opposing tight ends, or they're just going to rely more on zone looks. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is it's going to be more zone looks. I think that's kind of the MO of this defense. That's what they typically do. I think this is going to be very zone heavy, just like the Rams last year. And I think their personnel is like well suited to it. Like I think the guys they have could be a good fit for that. So, yeah, I'm expecting more zone, less, especially with like Helms. If he's the second safety, like I don't really think they want him playing man coverage on tight ends. I think you feel pretty good about Helms dropping back into like robber coverage or, sort of that short zone stuff, that middle of the field type coverage, and that while Jessie Bates kind of gets the deep middle and that sort of thing. They're probably going to play a fair amount of cover 3 type stuff, so that I think that's a better fit if they're not going to get a higher end like second safety and they're going to go with more of a specialized guy like a DeMarco Helms that's going to play the box. I think the zone coverage is probably the best way to mitigate some of the range issues that Helms has.
Nice. I love that breakdown. Thank you. I want to mention just Raheem Morris because I think his background comes from defensive backs. So he's someone that's elevated secondary players in the past in the defensive back. So I'm curious what's his influence going to be like, even though he is the head coach and he's got a lot more other priorities, but safety is kind of his bread and butter. Like, remember when Dan Quinn was here, everybody look at the defensive line, who's really going to make those strides. So this positional group is going to be very fascinating to watch just because of the coaching background, the lineage, and let's not forget Jerry Gray's impact or just his influence as well. So even though this group does look a bit unproven and there's some major question marks, I think we could see one or two players break out. And if they can, combine with Terrell and Bates, this could be an above average unit.
Yeah, no, I think that's what you're saying is absolutely correct. Like I think they have a ton of faith in this coaching staff's ability to coach up these corners and safeties, which is why they haven't invested much like this offseason. Like I think everyone was expecting them to add a corner. They don't. They do add Hamilton in free agency, but very low level contract. But I think they just feel like, yeah, well, we can coach up these guys. Like we like these guys. I don't think any veterans that we're going to get, for our price range that we're looking at are going to be better. Like we'd rather just see these young guys play. Maybe the same thing at safety, with Helms and Grant. So we'll see. I think, safety probably the one I would still think maybe they're going to add another veteran at some point, but this is training camp's the time. It's like, okay, let's see if we can coach these guys up and get this young secondary rolling because, the payoff to getting some of these young guys in here and playing major roles is that like, that's another spot you don't have to pay. And cause the cap's going to start to get tight. We're paying a quarterback now. And, Terrell's going to get paid. We're paying Jessie Bates. We're paying 2 defensive tackles. We're paying Caden Ellis on defense. So it's like, people are probably itching for this team to pay an edge rusher next year. So it's like you're paying a lot of guys. So you kind of need to find some of these young, cheaper players. Like if you could find a young, cheap, second safety, if you could find a rookie, like a cornerback 2 on a rookie contract, like a Clark Phillips, D. Alford, is probably going to be a restricted free agent next year where he's going to get a decent tender, but he's not making, 10 plus million. So, I think this is definitely a concerted strategy. Like this is something they're trying to do is develop these guys to save some cap while also, just getting some homegrown good players. And I think that could be great for them overall. Yeah. All right. Any final takes, Alan? I think we covered it pretty well.
Let's do one prediction. If you had a bank on a player merging as a certified credible starter, is it Clark Phillips or DeMarco Helms?
I just love Clark Phillips too much. I can't quit Clark Phillips. So yeah, no, I think Clark Phillips in this zone heavy scheme, playing outside where he's comfortable with A.J. Terrell probably shadowing the top bigger receivers. I think Clark Phillips will look pretty good. It's still a second year corner. Corners take a long time to kind of develop, but I think he will be kind of an unquestioned corner, like second outside corner starter for this team going forward.
Yeah.
So
His tape just pops out too. Like when you watch him, he's just so smooth.
yeah,
So and he has those natural instincts. So yeah, I'm with you on there. I think him coming into the league, there's a lot of buzz, and I'm not gonna say he fully solidified his place last year because he did have some growing pains I expected, but there was plenty to take out of there. We're just like, okay, this is someone you could depend on going forward. So, and he's gonna be tested right away. As we talked about the first 5 games. That schedule's a gauntlet, so it's gonna be really exciting to see how he holds up. But I think just the flashes and just even the college tape, it's just like, okay, we have something here. Let's
yeah.
see what we can work with.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad this isn't his first snaps, like in the
Yeah,
first 5 weeks of this season. I think it was really good that he got to play quite a bit towards the end of last year to get those sort of first couple game jitters out of the way. So I'm expecting good things from him this year, and I think this defense, I think it's gonna be hard for them to keep what they did last year intact. Like it's gonna be hard to match how good they were last year. But I think they could probably keep from falling off in a big way. Like I think if they could stay inside the top 20 in terms of defenses, maybe sneak inside the top 15, then this team will absolutely win double-digit games because of the improvements we're expecting on offense. So, and the secondary is like the biggest, other than edge rush, probably secondary is like the biggest question mark in terms of there's a lot of unproven guys, and I think this is the one spot where I think I feel pretty confident the coaching staff is just going to make it happen. Like they will figure something out. This group is proven that they can do that. The defensive line, that's one we're gonna have to wait and see a little bit, especially the edge rush. But secondary, I think we'll this will be a confidence building season for this coaching staff. So
right. I think most important for them, just because you don't know what to expect from the pass rush, just to limit explosive plays. When you limit explosive plays, it puts your defense at least in a position where you hold the opposition to 3 points. And if the offense is going to make the strides that we expect, where they can average in the mid-20s, potentially high 20s, then just limiting explosive plays would go a long way to having this team back in the playoffs finally.
yeah, that would be a big deal. So definitely excited to see this group play. This is one of the ones to watch in training camp, folks, because there's a lot of jobs up for grabs here. Probably one of the more unsettled groups on the roster. So stay tuned for that. Guys, he is Allen Strk at Allen Strk. Anything you'd like to let the people know about before we sign off today?
Right now, we have a very fun thing going on at the Locked On Falcons where we're honoring the greatest Falcons of the last 20 years in a trivia tournament. Kevin, the reigning champion, is in the second round. You could catch him in a few weeks. He's going to go up against David Shield. We'll be talking Desmond Trufant. And a lot of your other favorite Atlanta media personalities are competing. I got eliminated by Matt Chernoff in the first round. I managed to lose in overtime.
Oh man,
Work done. I think the age difference played a factor here, but nevertheless, we're honoring a lot of great Falcons. We have some good ones coming up. We got Jonathan Babineau coming up, Algie Crumpler, Roddy White, Desmond Trufant, and John Abrams. So this is the time of year you got to get creative. We can only talk about so much about the current state of Falcons. So it's a cool series that we're honoring the Falcon greats, and we're getting our favorite people together because Falcons media, Atlanta media, however you want to categorize it, we're very tightly knit, and we got to bring people together.
Yeah, no, it's a fun series. I'm enjoying being in it, and hopefully we'll be able to defend my title by the time we get to the bottom. But there's a lot of tough competition this year, so it's gonna be a tough path back to the championship. So it'll be fun though. Definitely check it out, guys, over on Locked On Falcons. I'm of course Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Thank you for watching Dirty Birds and Brews today. Please do subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the Patreon. Check out the channel memberships if you'd like to support the show. We really appreciate all your support there. Thank you, folks. We will be back. This will be the last roster preview, I believe, in this series. But don't worry, folks. We got by the time you're listening to this, we'll be just a couple weeks away from camp. So lots of good pre-camp content to get to as we go back to starting our more permanent preseason schedule next week. So keep an eye on that, folks. We got lots of good stuff coming your way as we get ready for another exciting training camp. So until then, guys, thank you so much for watching Dirty Birds and Brews. I'm Kevin Knight. He's Allen Strk. Until next time, guys, have a great day, folks. Thanks.